He thinks he still has time. But time has already started closing the door. It doesn't slam, it doesn't warn, it simply fades, the way stars disappear when the sun rises, quietly, inevitably. And that's what's happening now. He doesn't realize it. But the light is shifting. The gravity is changing. And you're starting to move without him. Not because you want to, but because something older than choice is pulling you forward. You still love him. That's the part no one sees. You would have stayed longer. You would have waited deeper. But the ache in your chest has turned into silence, and silence is the final warning. He's afraid, but he doesn't know what he's afraid of. He thinks he's afraid of losing freedom, of getting too close, of being seen. But that's not it. Not really. He's afraid of losing something he doesn't understand, afraid of needing something he keeps pretending he doesn't want, afraid of the way your presence unmakes his defenses. And now, the universe is tightening the cord, making him feel what you felt for months, the doubt, the confusion, the slow leak of love through unattended cracks, because you stopped reaching, you stopped rescuing, you stopped dancing to fill the silence he refused to name. And now the silence is filling him. He's waking up in the middle of the night without knowing why. He's feeling you slip without seeing you leave. He's haunted by the echo of something still alive, but disappearing. Because something ancient in you has already started walking away. And soon, he will have to choose. Not with words, but with soul. You didn't leave. You just stopped waiting for him to arrive. There's a difference, a quiet one, but it lives in your body like a final breath that didn't come back. You waited for his eyes to soften, for his walls to drop, for that invisible moment when he would finally step into the space you held open, not with words, but with soul. But it never came. He lingered at the threshold, torn between the ache that pulled him toward you and the fear that kept him frozen. So, you stayed. Longer than you should have. Deeper than he ever knew. You convinced yourself he just needed time, space, grace, and you gave it all, even when it hollowed you out. But something shifted. Not loud, not sharp, just a slow, sacred recognition. That love without presence becomes a wound. That longing without movement becomes a ghost. You didn't decide to leave. Your body did. Your silence did. Because the soul does not stay where it is not met. It waits. Then it begins to fold its wings. And now, the ache is his. The universe is no longer protecting his hiding place. It's stripping it away. Softly. Relentlessly. It is letting him feel the storm he avoided, the absence he created, the beauty he could not claim. And it hurts. Not because you're punishing him, but because the light is no longer held open. You were the invitation, the warmth, the home. But now the door is closing, and he's starting to realize he was never afraid of losing you. He was afraid of needing you, needing love more than pride, needing closeness more than control. But the moment is coming. The moment the soul can no longer hide behind thought. The moment the body decides. And when it comes, there is no going back. It always starts with silence, not the peaceful kind. The kind that lingers after too many almosts, after too many moments where he looked at you but didn't see you, where his arms held your body but not your truth. You felt it before he did. The invisible drift, the shift in gravity. The way your voice began to echo instead of land. He was there, but not really, and you kept trying to reach him. Not with force, but with presence. You tried to wrap your words around the space between you, to weave warmth through the cold places he wouldn't name. But silence has a scent. It starts to smell like morning before you even know what you've lost. You would lie awake beside him and feel farther than if he were gone. Because at least if he were gone, the ache would be honest. But this was betrayal in slow motion. The kind that doesn't bruise the skin, but stains the spirit. And he didn't notice. Or maybe he did. But noticing meant admitting. And admitting meant changing. So he stayed quiet. And your soul began to unravel. Not all at once, but in quiet ways. You stopped laughing as much, stopped reaching, stopped offering the softness that once poured from you like spring. You started pulling your light back in, not to punish him, but to protect what was left. Because even the most radiant woman cannot bloom in a room without sun. And now he feels it. The air is different. The silence no longer protects him. It accuses him. Because the part of you that stayed silent for too long is finally speaking. Not through anger, not through words, but through absence. And absence speaks louder than rage. This is how men wake up, not through confrontation, but through the emptiness left behind. And now he's standing in it, feeling the ache you carried for months, but too late. At first, he blames the wind, the cold, the distance, the way your eyes no longer hold the same question. He tells himself you're changing, growing distant, hard to read. But the truth is simpler and more haunting. You're not changing. You're revealing. You're becoming what you always were, without the distortion of his delay. He doesn't know how to name this, because he's used to love chasing him, softness bending for his fear, women shrinking just enough to stay. But you stopped shrinking. And now, the room feels different, the mirror too honest, the air too still. He walks through his days with a new ache in his chest, the one you used to carry. It's not just about missing you. It's about realizing he never really held you. He held the idea of you, the comfort, the orbit, the invisible devotion he assumed would always wait. But you're not orbiting anymore. You're not revolving around his silence. You're not spinning in circles around what he won't say. You're standing still. And that stillness shakes him, because he doesn't know how to find you when you're no longer chasing. He starts to feel the ground, really feel it. Not through logic, not through plans, but through the deep animal knowing that something sacred is slipping away. And this is where the unraveling begins. Not yours, his. He begins to remember moments he forgot to mark, touches he rushed, pauses he missed. He begins to hear your voice in places you've gone quiet, smell your skin in places you've stopped showing up, feel your absence in the exact places where you used to ache for him. This is how the universe teaches love. Through reversal, through silence, through the taste of a presence that can no longer be reached. And now he feels it. The hum beneath his ribs, the tremble in his breath. Not fear of losing you, but the unbearable truth that you're already gone in all the ways that matter. It's always too quiet before it's too late. He walks through the rooms where your laughter used to live. He picks up the cup you left on the counter. Still warm, still real, and yet something feels missing. Not the object, not the woman, the thread. The invisible thread that once tied his world together. He doesn't understand it yet, but he feels it. The sudden weight of lightness. The way everything seems untouched, but nothing feels alive. This is how grief enters, not as loss, but as a presence that no longer answers back. He thought you would always be there, because you always were. Through the moods, through the silences, through the push and pull of his unspoken fear. You waited, you softened, you stood at the edge of his fortress, barefoot and open-hearted, hoping he would see you. But men do not see what they are not ready to hold. And now he wonders why he can't breathe the same. Why the coffee tastes different. Why the bed feels too wide. It's not about the things that changed. It's about the energy that left. You, your longing, your love, your invisible yes, gone, not in punishment, in peace. And that peace terrifies him. Because it is not angry. It does not beg. It does not plead. It simply exists without him. And for the first time, he must face what you felt all along. The ache of loving someone who isn't reaching back. The hollow of waiting for a man who can't decide. The slow death of intimacy without presence. But now, the roles have reversed. And he is the one pacing. He is the one wondering. He is the one breaking, silently. This is what the universe does when we ignore the sacred. It takes it away, just enough to make us feel it. Then asks, "Will you move now?" He still has a choice, but not for long. Because love never begs. It offers. And once the offering ends, so does the story. He thought you'd come back, that if he stayed quiet long enough, you'd fold, you'd return, you'd reach again. But something in you broke differently this time, not like glass, like a spell. The trance is lifting, the illusion that love means waiting forever, that his avoidance is your responsibility, that your softness must carry both your hearts. Not anymore. There is a moment in every woman's body when the silence turns holy, when the ache turns into fire, when the yearning begins to speak a different language, not one of pleading, but one of knowing. And that knowing is rising in you now. You no longer need him to choose you, because you have already chosen yourself, in the quietest, fiercest way. And he can feel it, even if he doesn't understand it, even if he denies it. He feels the pulse that used to guide him, missing. He feels the tide that always brought you back, still. Because when a woman returns to herself, the earth shifts, the air thickens, the mirror reflects differently, and a man who has been hiding from love starts to tremble, not from guilt, from loss. Because this kind of loss isn't loud. It doesn't slam doors. It just stops singing. And silence, when sacred, becomes the sharpest sound. He replays old conversations, not to remember, but to find what he missed. The tone of your voice, the look in your eyes, the way you said, "I'm fine," when you were drowning. It's all different now, because he's finally listening. But the music is gone. He's afraid. Not of being alone, but of being without the one soul who saw him and stayed. And now he's realizing the woman he thought would always wait has already begun to walk away. Not in anger, not in noise, but in truth. Somewhere inside him he thought love was static, that what doesn't break stays, that what is loyal waits. He never saw the wild rhythm underneath your devotion, He never noticed how often you bent the stars just to stay, how many pieces of your truth you swallowed, how many nights you curled around his absence as if it were presence. He didn't see it, because you made it look effortless. You turned ache into offering. You turned fear into patience. You turned confusion into care. But that magic, it came from you, and it is no longer endless. There is a price to loving someone who won't meet you. There is a quiet death that happens inside a woman who waits too long to be claimed. You began to feel it, the weight in your chest when he looked at you and saw comfort, not mystery. The hollowness after conversations that touched everything except the one thing you needed. He thought you were content, but you were collapsing. Not all at once, just a little more each day. You laughed, you loved, you stayed. But the center was leaking, and he didn't ask why. And now, the leak has turned into a flood. You no longer apologize for wanting more. You no longer dim your voice to match his silence. You no longer mistake stagnation for safety. And this is what terrifies him. Because he sees you rising, not loudly, but with gravity. And men like him, they feel gravity before they understand it. He doesn't know how to name it, but something ancient in him is stirring. The same part that once chased fire across the dark. The same part that knows when home is slipping through its hands. He feels it now, not just your absence, but your return to yourself. And it leaves him with one question he can no longer avoid. Will he meet you here, in this new place? Or watch you disappear into the woman he was too afraid to hold? He used to think you were the constant, the one fixed point in his sky. No matter how far he drifted, no matter how long he took, you would be there. Not because you said it, but because you always were. And that became his comfort, his escape, his excuse. He didn't have to choose, because you were already choosing. He didn't have to leap, because you already stood with open arms. He let you hold the weight of what he wouldn't name. He let you carry the dream he was too afraid to claim. But dreams have limits, and you have reached yours. Now he feels it, in the pauses that no longer fill, in the words that no longer come, in the love that no longer chases. He tries to distract himself. Work, noise, other faces. But the ache follows, because it was never about what you did. It was about what you were. You were the rhythm his chaos leaned on, the fire his coldness curled around, the truth he avoided and longed for. And now that truth is gone. Not gone as in lost, gone as in withdrawn, gone as in reclaimed. He senses it in strange moments, a scent, a song, the way morning light hits the pillow beside him, empty, warm, gone. He's not afraid of being alone. He's afraid of what aloneness reveals. The mirror, the choices, the moments he let slip. And above all, the presence that once waited for him to awaken, now watching from beyond the veil of his delay. This is the cost of stillness, of waiting too long, of treating love like a constant instead of a living, breathing, disappearing thing. Now, the silence is not safety, it is consequence, and he stands in it, surrounded by everything he never said, haunted by everything you never will again. There is a moment in every man's life when the illusion begins to crack, not from outside, but from within. It starts slow, a restlessness, a question that doesn't leave. Then a sound, familiar but distant, the echo of a woman's footsteps, fading. At first, he tells himself it's nothing. She's just quiet. She's just tired. But deep down, he knows. The thread has slipped from his hands, not torn, not cut, released. And that knowing unravels him, because he thought he had more time. He thought devotion meant forever. He thought your love was rooted deeper than your pain. But even the deepest river changes course when the earth beneath it shifts. And you've shifted. You've turned toward a silence he cannot follow. A silence not of hurt, but of return. Return to what you know. Return to who you were before you learned to wait. He sees it now. The light in your eyes no longer pointed at him. The curve of your smile belonging to something unseen. The way you move, not toward him, but away from what does not move. He feels the urgency, but urgency born from fear is not enough. And love, once awakened, demands more than panic. He will have to strip himself bare, meet you without armor, without excuses, without delay. And that is where the trembling lives, because he never learned to love without hiding. But now, the hiding hurts more than the truth. And he knows, if he does not act now, if he does not meet the part of himself that ran from you, he will lose not just your presence, but the part of his soul that only ever opened in your light. Now he watches you from the doorway of his own hesitation. He doesn't speak, but his silence is louder than it's ever been. Because now, you are not waiting to be heard. You are already gone, even as your body remains. Gone in the way only a woman can be when her soul has untied the knot. He can feel it, not in your words, but in your breath. Not in what you do, but in what you no longer reach for. The weight has shifted. You are no longer asking. You are no longer hoping. You are no longer kneeling before his fear and calling it love. You have risen, and he is still on the floor. This is where the universe speaks through absence. This is where the divine begins to press on the wound, not to punish, but to reveal. He walks through the memory of your love like a man waking from a dream he did not know was ending. And everywhere he turns, there is evidence of what he missed, of what he dismissed, of what he never dared to hold. He replays the last time you touched him, not just your hands, your heart. He remembers the way your eyes lingered that night, not with hope, but with farewell. And now it makes sense. The softness, the stillness, the way you gave him one last chance and let it pass. He knows. He knows this isn't just a phase. This isn't just space. This is a door that only opens once, and the handle is slipping from his grasp. Not because you hate him, but because you finally loved yourself more than his indecision. And the universe is not subtle anymore. It is echoing your silence back to him, one missed chance at a time, one breath too late, one heartbeat too far. He is afraid, not of your anger, but of your peace, because now he understands. Peace means it's real. Peace means it's done. Peace means the fire is no longer burning for him to see the light. Somewhere between your last question and his last delay, something sacred unraveled. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't betrayal. It was quieter than that. It was the moment your hope stopped knocking, the moment your waiting turned inward, the moment your body whispered, "No more." He didn't notice. Not then. Because your silence looked like grace. Your patience looked like devotion. But it wasn't patience anymore. It was grief, disguised as stillness. You weren't waiting. You were mourning. You were gathering the parts of yourself you had scattered across his hesitation. Piece by piece, you called yourself home. And now, he feels it. The absence, the shift, the invisible door closing without sound. He doesn't know how to name this pain, only that it lives where your laughter used to echo, where your eyes used to rest on him with the weight of yes. Now, those eyes are distant, not cold, but free. And freedom has a scent. He smells it on you now. Not perfume, but peace. And that peace unravels him, because it doesn't beg, it doesn't bend, it just is. You have become the storm and the stillness, the ache and the answer. And he is left with the ruin of his own delays. This is how the universe teaches presence, by letting us feel what we could not see, by letting absence burn through illusion. And now he knows, not through thought, but through loss. You didn't leave him. He left you. In every moment he chose silence over soul, safety over surrender. And now he stands alone in the echo of what could have been, if only he had reached back. There is a silence that doesn't want a reply, a silence that simply says, I saw everything, not with anger, not with blame, but with the clarity of a soul that finally stopped explaining itself. You are in that silence now, not because you stopped loving him, but because love, in its purest form, refuses to be diminished. You offered the whole sky. He hid beneath a cloud. You offered flame. He flinched at the heat. You offered truth. He offered time. But truth does not wait for timing. It arrives when it's ripe, and then it leaves. And now, it's leaving. He can feel it slipping through everything he once took for granted. Your laughter, your gaze, your instinct to understand before being understood. Gone. He sits in the same room, but it's colder now. Not because the temperature changed, but because you did. You're no longer feeding the fire. And without your flame, the illusion fades. He begins to realize love was never about what he received. It was about what you gave, freely, fiercely, and without demand. Until now. Now your giving has turned inward. Now your hands are open, but not reaching. Now your love has become a sanctuary he no longer has the key to enter. He thought you were his mirror, but you were his moment, a sacred, singular chance to awaken. And he closed his eyes. He thought he could delay, stretch the tether, test the bond. But there are bonds that only stretch once, and when they snap, they don't make a sound. They just dissolve. Now he's left with memory of who you were before you stopped asking, of what he had before it required action. And the weight of that knowing is finally breaking his stillness. Because the cost of not choosing you was never losing you. It was losing the part of himself that only ever lived in your light. Something ancient in him is waking up, not with joy, with grief. The kind of grief that doesn't cry. It remembers. It remembers the way your presence softened the sharp edges of his silence, the way your voice wrapped around his walls and waited there, without force, without demand. He didn't know then how rare that kind of love is, how sacred. He thought he had time, but time does not wait for the unwilling. And now, the delay has come full circle. Now, the one who waited is gone. He tries to call it back, with gestures, with glances, with ghost-touch apologies. But it's not the same. Because once a woman walks back into her own soul, she does not return empty-handed. She brings with her the memory of her own worth, and that memory does not forget. You no longer ache in the same places. You no longer bend at the same words. You've become the version of yourself he was never ready to meet. And now he stands on the threshold where you once stood, longing, silent, unseen. This is the sacred reversal, the cosmic mirror, not to punish, but to reveal, to show him what love requires, what love demands, what love becomes when it is no longer hidden beneath fear. He is being undone by his own delay. Not because you want it, but because love, unchosen, becomes absence. And absence teaches what presence could not. He sees it now. The cost of silence, the price of waiting. He sees you, not as the woman who left, but as the woman who stayed too long. And in that seeing, something inside him breaks open, not with regret, but with reverence. Because now he understands, the universe wasn't punishing him. It was protecting you. There is a silence now, but it does not ache. It rests, like the earth after fire, like the body after release. Not because it was easy, but because it is done. You did not walk away in anger. You walked away in truth. You didn't stop loving. You stopped waiting. And that changes everything. Because when a woman stops waiting, the entire sky rearranges. Not to punish what came before, but to honor what she became. He will feel you forever, not as a wound, but as a threshold. The moment he could have stepped forward, the moment he could have chosen, the moment the universe whispered, now. And he didn't. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to rise. And you rose anyway, without witness, without guarantee, without arms to catch you. You rose because something deeper than desire pulled you toward your own name. And now he knows. What you gave was never ordinary. It was sacred, and it will not return. Not because you are gone, but because you are whole. And wholeness does not wait at half-closed doors. You didn't lose him. You remembered yourself. You didn't break. You became unshakable. And now, in the quiet he once mistook for safety, he hears it, the echo of your love, not as presence, but as prophecy. And it will follow him into every room where truth is needed, into every silence that asks to be filled, into every moment where a man must decide between hiding and coming home. And maybe, one day, he will. But not to find you waiting, to find you gone, and more alive than ever.